welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast series. I'm Nina Lockwood, founder and director of Intuitive Interim and Executive Search. Throughout this series, I will be sharing engaging conversations with talented leaders from across the UK transport sector. Today, I'm really pleased to welcome Jenny Saunders, who is the Customer Services Director for GTR. Jenny will share her career story with us from her original start in retail and what she's found in terms of the similarities now she's joined the rail industry. I hope you enjoy. Jenny, welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the virtual couch today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your career story. So currently Customer Services Director for GTR. I'd love to know about your current role. What's a week in the life of, if you like, if there is such a thing as a standard week. But I'm also really interested, and I know our audience will be as well, to hear about how you got into rail in the first place. But what's your career been like? Can you take us on your story?
Yeah, thank you, Nina. Happy to. And first of all, thanks for having me here. I feel like I'm in fantastic company with other podcasts that you've done, so really great to be here. So I'm currently the Customer Services Director for Thameslink and Great Northern at GTR, and I've been doing that role since November 2019. So I started in that role just 4 months before the pandemic, which was obviously very interesting in terms of starting a new role around that time. I've been in the rail industry for about 13 years. I love the industry. It's a fantastic place to work. I guess a typical week in my life, that you kind of suggested there isn't really a typical week, and especially over the last sort of year to 18 months, there's been so much to learn, so many different things that we've had to do. I guess if I could describe my favourite days at work, the days that really make me want to jump out of bed and say, yes, I can't wait to get into work. Those are the days when I'm out on the front line, when I'm out visiting depots or stations, when I'm with my team, who I personally get a lot of energy from. And really, I guess, my role is all about delivering 3 things. So delivering a fantastic customer experience, delivering an accessible and an inclusive railway, and finally delivering brilliant basics. So what does that mean? So a clean, on-time, safe railway. And that delivering those 3 things are really my main accountabilities. I've got a great team, and like I said, getting out and listening to the views of our people, listening to the views of our customers, taking those ideas and taking that feedback and translating that into action that improves things. That's really what drives me and gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, do you know what that's making me think of? A phrase that I'm hearing a lot at the moment when I'm talking to people, and albeit that the trains are kind of the starting point, because that's what the rail industry is here to deliver. It's not all about the trains, it's about the people, isn't it? And you literally lit up when you started describing that, being out on the front line with your team in the depots, at the stations, and kind of seeing it all in action. So you can literally see where your passion was coming from. So before the role that you're currently doing, Jenny, take us right back. How did you get into the industry in the first place?
Yeah, I guess I'd be lying if I said that when I was growing up as a little girl that I thought rail would be where I would take my career. It certainly never occurred to me to think about rail as a career when I was at school or university. I wouldn't say I fell into it by accident. I very much applied to join the rail industry, but it certainly wasn't part of the plan. I studied English literature at university because I loved the subject, and I had not a clue what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I guess studying a subject like English qualifies you for absolutely everything and absolutely nothing at the same time. But that was university, and that was great. And I've always worked from a very young age in a variety of customer service roles. So whether that's putting the supplements in newspapers for a weekend job, and then selling lottery tickets and things, or whether that's sort of weekend jobs in clothing retailers. I've always worked in customer service, and I guess through university I did the same to help pay my way through university. And then at the point where everyone was applying for jobs, I thought, apply for what you know. So I did, and I applied for graduate schemes in retail. Primarily in clothing retail, because that's the sector I was working in at the time. And I was really lucky to get on a scheme with Gap, the clothing retailer, and I really loved working there. It was a great opportunity, and I worked my way up from sort of shift-based kind of duty management type roles up into store manager and senior store manager roles, helping open some new stores and getting involved in different kinds of projects. And I did that for about 7 years. And then I got to a point where I felt like I wasn't necessarily learning anymore. I still enjoyed working in customer service, and I loved working with my team, but I wasn't personally growing anymore, and I wasn't quite sure whether staying in clothing retail at that point was going to help me grow. So I started looking for other roles, and by coincidence at that point in time, my local train operating company, Southwest Trains as it was back then, had started actively recruiting for people with experience in other customer service industries to bring that kind of that different perspective, the different knowledge and experience into rail. And so I opened my monthly retail jobs magazine, and lo and behold, there was an advert for a train operating company, which stood out simply because it wasn't what I was used to seeing. And I thought, oh, that's different. I was a commuter at the time on Southwest Trains, and so I knew the brand and I was familiar with the service, and they were advertising for area station managers, and I thought, do you know what, I'll give that a go. So I did, and I followed through with the application to join the railway, and I was fortunate to get through to interview. And I remember going to the presentation at the beginning of the interview day and being by far the youngest one in the room by quite a long way, at least 15 years, and I was the only woman in the room as well. And I remember sort of looking around, looking over my shoulder and thinking, what am I doing here? Am I in the right place? And then, of course, the mind immediately goes to, am I here to make up the numbers? Am I ticking a box? You know, there was a woman in the interview. But the interview process was really enjoyable, and there was a few stages, and I couldn't quite believe it when I was finally offered the role to join Southwest Trains, which I did 13 years ago, and as an area station manager. So that's how I came to join rail. Fell in love with it almost immediately, as I think the saying goes, once you're in, you never want to leave, and that certainly defines how I feel about the industry. So I guess from joining 13 years ago, I've done a variety of roles. They've all been in customer service within the rail industry. So I did a variety of different area, regional type manager roles, and then moved into head of department role. And then the franchise changed hands and became South Western Railway. And then I took on a broader role within the Customer Service Directorate, with taking on revenue protection. And then the opportunity to join GTR came up back in 2019, and it was a great opportunity to work with a different owning group, a different part of the rail network, and also to grow my career as well. And that was a really great move. I feel really positive about doing that, and still to this day love working in the industry. So hopefully that answers the question around why rail and how did I get where I am. Yeah,
it really does. And you know what, I'm super impressed that 13 years ago Southwest Trains were thinking about bringing people in from different industry sectors, and not only thinking about it but placing that advert in the Retail Journal. What really interests me with that is the fact that you ended up in this assessment centre, the youngest person there and the only female. So kind of the exec search person in me wants to know, well, how many people applied then when they saw it in the Retail Journal? How many people actually applied to it? Because the demographic suggests that perhaps not so many, but that sounds like really cutting edge for 13 years. When I came into the industry, which is 8.5 years ago now, one of my standard questions when I took a brief from a client for a new role would be, and can we go outside sector? Does the ideal candidate need to have rail experience? And initially, the response to that would be, probably not, but we'll have a look at somebody from outside sector. And so, but those candidates were always a bit of a kind of the wild card in the shortlist, and not many clients in the early days were saying yes to those people from outside sector. That has changed so significantly over the last 8.5 years, especially in your area of specialism around customer service, because there is a recognition that other industry sectors are a little bit further ahead than we are in terms of the customer. So that's really interesting, Jenny. Thank you for sharing the story with us. And I do love hearing about when people have come from different industries into rail, because I think that's really important to understand that there are lots and lots of transferable skills. So just because you're in retail doesn't mean you need to stay there, because actually the skills that you've built up are really relevant for other industry sectors.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I guess I'm quite a loyal person, so I loved working in retail. I loved working for my company, and again, moving from South Western Railway over to GTR was a really big wrench for me. But actually, each move that I've made from one industry to another, and from one organisation to another, it really does give you a sense of confidence to realise that actually, leadership skills, the different transferable things that you do in your roles really can make you can really execute those skills in other businesses. And the more I've done that, the more sort of inner confidence I guess I've had to be able to do that. And I guess for anyone that's listening to this, I'd really encourage people to think in that way, because one thing that the rail industry does do is it does breed a lot of loyalty. People like to stay in rail for a long time. People can choose to stay in their organisations for a while, which is great, but there's just as much opportunity by thinking a little bit differently as well. And whilst I love rail and I hope to stay in rail for the rest of my career, I've taken a lot of personal learning from moving around, which has been good.
Yeah, fantastic. And as much as we love the industry, and I know we have a shared passion for the rail sector, I think we would both acknowledge that some change and transformation has been needed. So there's been some areas that we could do better in, and I think we could also acknowledge that the events of last year accelerated that change and transformation quite significantly. One of the things which wasn't accelerated and that we've been waiting for a very long time happened last week as we're recording this, and we eventually have had sight of the Williams-Shapps report. I'm not expecting you to go into any detail on that, Jenny, but what I'm interested in is, from your perspective, as you look at where we are now as an industry, what we know at a very high level that the government's expectations are going to be. If you had 3 wishes for what comes next, what would happen?
Okay, great question. It was really great to finally read the Williams-Shapps plan for rail. You're right, it was a long time coming. Although the timing, I think, is useful now as we move through into recovery for rail. I think actually that's worked really well. I found it an incredibly interesting read, lots in there, but the 7 promises that are in the document and the 10 aims in the plan, I don't think anyone can argue with those. They're really sensible. They're also really exciting in equal measure. I guess those that have been in rail for a while, a bit like myself, but there are people with far many more years service than I've had, will have experienced change to a greater or lesser degree. So that could be franchises changing hands, the change from British Rail to privatised railway, the move from rail track to Network Rail. What's clear from all of these things is that there is no shortage of opportunities that comes from these big changes. And ultimately, for me as a customer services director, it's the opportunity to improve things for our customers is one not to be missed. I guess when I read the report, there were 4 words that jumped out to me the most: innovation, speed, simplification, and growth, which is really important. And for me, it really has to be about making things better for our customers, helping drive the economy and the recovery of our country from the pandemic more generally. You're absolutely right. There's still a lot more detail to come out from the report over the coming months and maybe even the next couple of years. But for me, the biggest opportunity is around simplifying things for our customers. We want customers to choose rail. We want to make it easy for them to choose rail. And 55 million fares in the fare system is not making it an easy choice right now. So anything that we can do to make that easier has got to be a good thing. Making things simpler, attracting and retaining the right talent. These are all huge opportunities that I hope will come from the William Shapps review, along with doing things faster, doing things greener. These are all great opportunities. I guess your question around if I had 3 wishes, it's a great question. And actually it's often a question that I ask some of our frontline teams when I'm out and about doing station and depot visits, because it's a really good way of getting the conversation going and getting them to think about what they'd like to see. But you've just asked me that question, so I need to come up with an answer now. Yes. So it probably won't surprise you if I give sort of a very customer focused orientated set of answers. So I guess my first wish would be for a continued and increased investment in making our railways more accessible. So we've come a long way in this field as an industry, which is good, but there is a lot more to do. In my organisation at GTR, we're super committed to doing that. And we've invested a lot of time in training and things like that. And it's great to see the industry commitment to making things better. But as this is about a magic wand and a wish, I would say that it would be great if we could accelerate the pace on driving accessibility across our rail network, and that we should be constantly challenging ourselves to do better in that area. I guess my second wish, I've already alluded to this, but making things easier for our customers around fares reform, just making things simpler and easier, and value for money. We want customers to see rail as a good deal, that buying their ticket made them feel good about that journey, that it was great value for money, it was easy, and it becomes part of their lives once more. And so that cannot come soon enough for me, both as a customer and as an employee in the industry. Final wish. So this is a big one. Final wish. So for me, it's about making sure that the industry is attractive, diverse, exciting, sustainable in terms of the roles that we offer. So you've already talked earlier and said, oh, my eyes lit up to when talking about the people that I work with. People are at the heart of this industry. It's what makes rail a great place to work. It's why people stay. It's the reason I love working here. And I think, and I wish and hope that in the coming years that we maximise the opportunity to really set ourselves up for success, make sure the roles that we have are exciting, they're innovative, but that they're truly customer focused, that we invest in outstanding training, that we provide opportunities for everyone, and we celebrate and have a really diverse and inclusive workforce. Lots in there, but for me, there's such a need to invest in the colleagues that work here. It is what makes it a great place to be, and it's what helps our customers experience the best that rail has to offer too.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you on all 3 of those, Jenny. I'm going to give my magic wand an extra special polish.
Please do.
Make sure that when I when you hear that tinkling sound and you know that the fairy godmother's in town, brilliant. I love those. I love it, and as I say, completely and utterly agree with you. And for me, one of my I guess from my previous career in the banking world, where customer service was very much my thing, I came across the Harvard Business School model, the service profit link. And for me, what you've just described, where you're looking after the people who work in the industry, we're making it attractive that other people want to come and work in rail. We're looking after them, we're investing in them, we're giving them the best training and helping them to be the best they can be, has a knock-on effect on how people feel when they come and travel on the railway. It's a pleasant place to be. We've got a smiling face on board. We've got a warm welcome at the stations. And actually travelling by train becomes a really pleasant experience. And there is, without a doubt, there is still a romance about the railway, without a shadow of a doubt. We just need to get that back again. So I think there's just an exciting future and opportunity ahead. I completely agree. So we've alluded to the fact that we've had a challenging, as an industry and as individuals, we've had a challenging 15 months at this point, from going back to March 2020. Lots of rubbish stuff that we've all had to deal with, and obviously the industry was deep into crisis management. But I also believe firmly that we've all learned some stuff as we've gone through that, and this stuff that we will hold on to, that we wouldn't have ordinarily had if we hadn't gone through the pandemic. What would that be for you, Jenny? What have you learned? What do you think's the standout learning for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been an interesting 15 months, and one I'll personally never forget. But of course, I'm sure that resonates with everyone listening to this. We've all been on our own personal and professional journeys. For me, the standout learn for me is just how, again, it's people orientated, but just how exceptional our people are, how resilient they are, how important every single cog in our railway machinery is to making things work well. And for me, it is an industry where we often show ourselves at our best when things go wrong, and how we pull together as a family, a railway family, has just been phenomenal. I mean, the speed at which the industry reacted, I don't think any of us would have thought would have been capable of as an industry, perhaps if we were to think about, how we might have thought 2 years ago. But just seeing how all of the teams across the various organisations have come together and just really understanding how resilient we are, I think that's just an important learn. It's been an important test for us all, but it's an important learn. I mean, it's clearly not something we'd want to repeat, and we certainly wouldn't want to be working in this way all of the time. But just to understand how great our people are, and how much more we can deliver when we work together and when we work collaboratively, all with the same aims. For me, that's an important thing that I really hope stays long after the pandemic has hopefully gone away. So that for me is probably the biggest learn.
Yeah, and I think there's many of our colleagues in the industry would agree with that. I think the word collaboration has been used over and over again, and it's one of the words that I think it can't be overused. I want to hear more and more of it. I want to hear more about how everybody, each one of the stakeholders in the industry, is all pulling together, and long may that continue. So I think it's important to hang on to that. And finally, moving on to some, in terms of the learnings, I guess, carrying on that theme. When you look back over your career, Jenny, and you kind of think about the different people that you've worked with and the different leaders that you've had, what have you picked up? What has there been a particular person or people that have inspired you and kind of guided you along the way, or are there particular leadership skills that you've added to your portfolio? So on the subject of leadership.
Oh, another really great question. I've learned so much from others, and I've probably learned as much about how not to do things, perhaps from some, as I have learned from some amazing role models that I've had. So thinking about, I guess, people that have really inspired me or that I've learned the most from, I guess I'd struggle to name just one, but two people spring to mind. If you don't mind indulging me to share those, they might be names that are familiar with some people, but I guess the first person I'd call out is a lady called Kelly Barlow. She worked in the sector for a long time in a variety of senior manager roles, and I worked for Kelly during we were part of a pre-mobilisation team for the new South West Trains franchise back in 2016. I'm sure you'll all be aware that South West Trains didn't stay as the franchise; it changed hands, but we were in the process of pre-mobilising in the hope of retaining that franchise, and during that period of time when I was working with Kelly, she really challenged me to think outside of my comfort zone, think that I could do more than what I was doing, that I had those transferable skills that you mentioned earlier, and that I could be more than I currently was. And that was just really inspiring. But the bit that I'll particularly remember was when we found out that we hadn't retained the franchise and that we'd lost, the way she led her team through that heartbreak, and heartbreak is the only word for it, if I'm being honest with you. It was just really inspiring, and I learned an awful lot from her about how to do something like that when these things happen. So that will always stay with me. I guess the second person I'll mention is a gentleman called Andrew Fairbank. So again, some people may have heard of him. He recently retired after over 40 years in the industry. And he has so much knowledge and passion for the rail industry, but particularly for the customer. He really inspired me, coming from a customer service background, to really be constantly thinking about the customer. And this was sort of 12, 13 years ago, so quite forward thinking for the industry back then. He's the reason I'm here. He gave me my job in rail, and he's left a real legacy of senior managers all over the rail industry of people that have worked for him. So just the loveliest, kindest man, and I'll always be grateful to him too. So those are my two.
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. I know Kelly, I don't know Andrew, but you've given me goosebumps there, Jenny, with those stories. I think they're great. And it is lovely when you reflect on your career and where you are now and how you got there and the people that have influenced you on the way. And absolutely, I can definitely relate to some people are there to teach you how not to do it as much as they are to teach you how to do it. So those stories. Thank you. And in relation to the final bit of the podcast, as it's become tradition in this first series of the Intuitive Insights pod, to ask my guests to leave us with a quote that is meaningful to them. So if I can ask you to share a quote, Jenny, that means something to you, that you enjoy, then I would really appreciate that.
I'd love to. And thank you for giving me a heads up that this was coming as well, because it was when I was thinking about my favourite quotes, there were so many I could have picked from, but this one has always really resonated with me, and one that I've often shared with the teams that I've worked with. So it's a quote from Maya Angelou, who you might be aware is an American writer and civil rights activist. And she said so many fabulous things throughout her career while she was with us. But this is my favourite, and I'm just going to refer to my notes to make sure I don't get it wrong. So I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that resonates with me, because that's how I like to be led, and it's how I hope to be able to lead my teams as well.
Jenny, that's just brilliant. More goosebumps. Thank you for that. I love a good Maya quote. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I knew I would. I loved hearing your story, and I'm really confident that our Intuitive Insights audience will love hearing it too. I think people's career stories are so inspiring for others to listen to. So thank you for sharing yours. Thank you for sharing some fantastic wishes, which, as I say, I'll make sure that my magic wand is extra sparkly for those. We'll see what happens as far as the the Williams Shapps report goes, and more will come out, I'm sure, over the next few weeks and months. But one thing is for sure, we're on the cusp of a rail revolution, and I think the position that you're in, with the focus that you have on customer service, is going to be right at the forefront of that. So good luck leading us on that.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining me on the Intuitive Insights podcast, Jenny.
Been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me, Nina.
My huge thanks to Jenny Saunders for sharing her intuitive insights with us on this episode. My next guest will be Ollie Glover, and it's a special edition for Rail Safety Week 2021. I do hope you'll join us.